Ik kan nie verstaan nie. Niemand antwoord my vraag nie. Hoekom staan ons nie saam nie? Weet jy hoekom man en vrou so staan nie? Ek kan dit net nie verstaan nie. Ons kan nie wag tot ons se kinders doodgaan.
My name is Kaylin Palm and I'm the Media Liaison Officer and GBV Coordinator for Action Society. So Action Society is a civil rights organization and my focus predominantly is about GBV. So what we do is we assist families who have lost their loved ones through gender-based violence, as well as children who have been exposed to either physical or sexual violence or who have been killed. So what we do is we do private investigation as well as court oversight. Working at Action Society, it's slightly different in that every single day, if I'm not in court listening to a court case relating to a child that has been murdered or a woman that has been murdered or a woman that has been assaulted either sexually or physically, then I am busy interviewing someone who has experienced, for example, a gang rape or was assaulted by a family member while she was sleeping or he was sleeping. So it does have an impact as a human, as a female, as a woman living in South Africa. It does have an impact in that I worry about where we're going as a nation, and just the general aspect of how would you feel if you are assaulted by someone. So it does have a very, I do feel sad, but at the same time I do feel angry about the state of women that is being violated and children that's being violated on a daily basis. Well, the constant thing is that if we just look at our crime statistics, I mean, the police minister, Becky Cele, just recently released crime statistics where for the period of between April and June, how many children were murdered in South Africa. We're looking at close to 300 children were murdered in a 3-month period. Like, just wrapping your head around that. That's kids that were killed, that were murdered. And some of them aren't even solved yet. Some of these cases aren't even solved yet. If we look at the rape statistics in our country, what is it? It's 5 per hour. You can only imagine how many cases per day, if that is 5 per hour, that women are being violated. Reoccurring, the fact that so many women are beaten, so many women are sexually assaulted, emotionally, financially, on a daily basis in South Africa. So we are constantly seeing how women and children are being violated every single day in our country. So that is my general concern, just the fact that there's a war on our bodies.
My name is Shaundre Lottering and I am originally from Mitchells Plain. I am 38 years old and a mom of 5. About, say, 12 years ago, I was gang raped and practically left for dead. Not by strangers, but people who knew me. There was a time in my life when I was drug addicted, when I was into gangsterism, where I loved the thrill of having a bad boy around, and that was one of life's kicks, basically. It all began with gang war and being in an abusive relationship for, say, about 7 years. I became numb to being abused because everybody always says that you need to hold on to the person you love. And sometimes love comes with different things. So I was in an abusive relationship and he fathered 2 of my children and I stayed there. And then he was killed by his friends and they eventually came after my 5-year-old daughter at the time, and I had to trade my life for hers. It was basically information that she was supposed to, that they said she had, but she didn't have at the time. So I traded my life for hers, and I was gang raped for about 4 days. And I remember trying to fight my way out, but also at a certain point, I gave up the fight because there was no way that I was going to overpower 6 men at a time. And I remember the smells, I remember laying there in my own blood. And eventually, day 4, they just gave up and left me there. I can't exactly tell you how I got out of the situation, but I can say that I held on to my faith as long as I could. I remember getting to a police station and the policeman told me that he's not going to take my case because I know it's gang war and I know what I signed up for. I think that was one of the most devastating things to hear from not only a policeman, but a male at that time. But right there, I just decided, you know what, let me close the book, close the chapter, and forget about things. But I didn't forget about it. I lived with that story. I lived with that pain. I lived with that anger inside of me for so long that I eventually lost who I am. I lost every part of me, every part of being a woman. And at times, so like a mom raising children, you want the best for your children, but you can't raise your children when you are broken. I just came out of a crazy relationship. My partner died, and being gang raped, being on drugs, it was like the world became smaller and smaller for me. And at that time, I turned to certain people for help, but it was like every door I came by just closed. But it didn't close because of society's ways. It closed because I gave up easily. I didn't feel like fighting anymore. Because everywhere I came, it was the same thing was said. You were a drug addict. You knew what you signed up for. So why are you coming out for help? And eventually my children was taken from me. And right then I decided enough is enough. It's either I'm going to fight for them or I'm going to walk away. I came to the social workers, and social workers basically said to me that there's no use in them applying for any rehab center for me because they know I won't come clean. They know it's going to end right there. So I might as well give up the fight. And then I went to the Ark. I rebuilt my life. My story kept on growing because now I became someone else and I could actually stand on the outside foot and look back at my story and actually see not what I did wrong, because believe me, I have no regrets of my life, none. But I could look at my life and I could now say, you know what, the story I can give to somebody else. I could actually sit there at the center and I could actually speak to ladies about abusive relationships now. I could actually stand there and hold that platform of being a survivor and not just a woman that went quiet. But I was quiet for so long, only then I realized that because I was quiet, I couldn't find my power. I couldn't find me again because I was holding on to a secret so dark.
Hello, my name is Heather Evans. I am from the United States and I live and work about an hour north of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the Northeast USA. In terms of my professional career, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I chose clinical social work because I wanted to work directly with people, and I wanted to work with people in a deep way over a period of time to really facilitate change in a person and family. One of the main things that I specialize in is sexual trauma and abuse. I have a group counseling practice with 5 other counselors as well. I am the co-founder of an organization named Valley Against Sex Trafficking, and I'm still on the board of that organization. It's in our region, addressing human trafficking in our region. I am also the founder of the Voices of the Survivors Project. And finally, I'm a fellow and adjunct professor of Global Trauma Recovery Institute, and I travel annually to East Africa, where I provide trainings to equip trauma healing caregivers in Kenya and Rwanda in East Africa. As I told you, I started an organization called VAST. And how did VAST start? Well, as I told you, when I was learning more about human trafficking, I knew I needed to do something to take action, but I didn't know what. I had a mentor that would say to me, sharpen your tools and God will provide the work. So it was really years of learning more about human trafficking, learning about trauma and preparation, not knowing what I was preparing myself for. At the time I was learning about human trafficking, I was hearing what was happening in places like Thailand and India. And I knew it wasn't easy to relocate there. But over time, I started to hear what it looked like in the United States. And at that time, I knew that we were greatly missing something, misidentifying cases of sex trafficking and just excusing it as prostitution that someone chose. I knew I needed to do something to take action. I remember attending a training, and at that training, someone said that you are now responsible because you have gained knowledge and you are responsible to do something with that knowledge. If you don't take action, if you remain passive and inactive, you are complicit and thus becoming a part of the problem. So it was at that time that a colleague of mine and I decided to start VAST, which stands for Valley Against Sex Trafficking, as we live in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania region in USA. We wanted to create an organization that was like a coalition. We wanted something that would equip and mobilize community members, law enforcement, and legal professionals, as well as other service providers, all to take part in taking a stand against human trafficking in our region. We had a small vision, but yet it was a great vision. The small vision was we really didn't expect that the organization would grow and continue on as long as it did. But our grand vision, really what we wanted for our community, was that we would have a community that was aware of human trafficking and the misconceptions of prostitution, and a community that was ready to report and take action when they saw evidences of sex trafficking. And we had law enforcement that were trained and believed that was an issue, and that we had greater laws that would really support prosecuting the traffickers and the buyers and supporting the women who were victims and in need of services. And finally, we needed to equip service providers who would be able to provide trauma-informed care and have all of the resources necessary for victims. So we knew it was kind of a great thing that was needed. And what I can tell you is that at the time when we would go to law enforcement, they would say to us, this is not something we can prioritize because we just frankly don't see these kinds of cases. Well, I can tell you now from the district attorney, which is like the highest level attorney who kind of oversees law enforcement in our regions, they now have prioritized human trafficking. They, in fact, our county was the first that was able to use our state's stronger human trafficking laws that came out in 2014. And we have a collaboration of organizations that work together to provide services for the survivors that come forward. So our little vision grew to something greater. It grew to a greater movement and a greater collaboration beyond what I could have ever asked for. Very early on, after some type of assault, you may have symptoms of trauma that keep you from sleep, that keep you from wanting to go out in public, that you don't even want to eat. You don't want to see anyone. You may be in a daze, or you may be very angry, or you may be very anxious. All of those are normal signs of trauma. So again, having the right kind of help for your body to be able to rest and be cared for and supported. And finally, you can't heal alone. Finding a good counselor that can come alongside you and help you understand the trauma and have a safe place to talk about what you experienced and find the truth of what you've experienced. And any kind of supportive community, many times that's other survivors who have been there and know what you're going through. And there's just sometimes a shared silent understanding. But having a support system is very important for the next steps of what happened. And finally, how can South Africa support survivors as a country? Again, looking at any barriers that exist, any misconceptions, and raising awareness. It even in our conversations and within our relationships, speaking up when we hear misconceptions, when we hear things that are shared that would would not support a safe community, that would further violence rather than support safety. In my research on sex trafficking survivors, probably one of the most compelling things was when I asked the survivors what was their greatest need and what was most helpful in healing, inevitably, they talked about relationship. People who believed in them, people who were with them for the long haul that did not give up on them. Some of those they described were professionals, and some were community members that they met at a local church or through a local coalition, but people who actually really helped them to rebuild their identity, to believe in the possibility of relationship again, to find safety and healing. Trauma healing is the opposite of the trauma experience. So it's the restoration of the things that were damaged and stolen from the trauma, restoring voice, restoring power and voice and choice, restoring safety in the context of relationship. Relationship is absolutely necessary, and that's something that everyone can provide to somebody who is a survivor of sexual assault, sexual abuse, or sex trafficking.
He was gone again for days on end, and then one night he came home, early afternoon, and he was just mad. He was just completely mad. And then he started fighting with me. Chased me around in the house. And then I fell. He kicked me under my feet in the kitchen and I fell. He sat on me on top of me. And then he beat me on my chest here. It's still very painful years later. I actually never went to have an x-ray done, whatever. And then as I beated him started eating me on my chest, I closed up my fist, my arms to stop him. He then took my head. As I was lying on the floor, he took my head and he started eating me with my head. Remember, I'm worried about my children. They went into our bedroom. Our baby was crying. All of my children was crying. I could hear. And all I heard my firstborn saying to his brother and his sister, don't worry, don't cry. And he was protecting them. But as my husband was busy beating my head on top of the floor, and as I counted 1, 2, became out strong. I could count. And I think when I came to 10, I was out. And as I came to, I heard in the distance my baby crying. And I was still breastfeeding him at the time, and he was on milk. And I couldn't move. I could not move, but I could open my eyes. I couldn't move my head. And eventually, as I was lying there, I could feel the top part of my body moving. And I still couldn't move. And I eventually was able to move my head and then eventually my arms and so on. But I couldn't move my bottom part of my body. I heard my son crying. I heard my daughter crying. I didn't hear my son crying. That firstborn. And they were crying, mommy and my baby and my daughter. And all I knew that I needed to get to my children. But when I woke up, the first thing I knew that I needed to get out because my husband is going to kill me. That's the first instinct that came to me. Hearing my children, not being able to move properly, but I needed to get out. And finally, after some time, I was able to move my hands and whatever. I then turned I went over to my left side because it's my stronger side. I'm left-handed. And I put my hands down on my floor, on the floor. And then I turned the bottom dead part of my body. It's completely dead. I couldn't move it. And I slithered like a snake from the kitchen to the bedroom. And as I was sliding to my bedroom, I managed to sit back up against the bed, and my son picked his little brother up and he put him in my arms for me to feed him. And in the meantime, my husband was, I vaguely turned to my left side and I saw him with a knife in his hand. He was going crazy. He was taking the knife and hitting it on his side of his body. Hitting the snake, and he's saying things and whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm praying, I need to get out. I need to get out. And as I was sitting there and as I was praying, I could feel my legs, the movement of my legs coming to. And then he would come to me and then he would take my face and, you know, I don't know if he spoke in Arabic or in Greek or whatever, but it was only madness that came out. And he took my face in his hands and clenched his teeth, and he would walk out, left me and he walked out, walking up and down. And finally, as I was sitting there, my son said to him, "Daddy, leave mommy, leave mommy." And then he left me, walking all over, up and down in the lounge, in the kitchen, in the room, in the toilet and whatever. And then my legs came too. But I didn't let him know that I've got my feelings back in my legs. I sat there. And then he said, "Come, come." And I'm like, "How you mean come, come?" He lifted me up the bed. He put me on our bed, with a knife in his hand. All I knew is that this man wants to sleep with me and I don't want to sleep with him. He put me on the bed. I won't forget, my eldest son was so protective. He protected his little brother and his sister. And while my husband and I, we were fighting, he then took the knife and he put the knife on my side. And he said to me, "I must lay still, or he's going to kill me." And as he was, I realized that if I do anything wrong, this man is going to... I already realized that, but then I knew the way he was shivering with the knife and going on, I knew for that moment, I can't try to be clever. I just needed to lie down. And then he said to me, "You're my wife, and I love you. And I'm going to sleep with you now. We're going to make love." And I said to him, "No." Now imagine, this man is filthy. He's got a stench. He's high. He's got a knife against me. He's already being violent and abusing me. And what he's done, here he asked me, I must lie down, and he wants to sleep with me. And we started fighting. Then he took that knife and he put the knife in my neck, and then I realized I need to lie still. And then he raped me in front of my children, all three.
Okay, my name is Lauren Erasmus, but on air I have kept my maiden surname, so Lauren Isaacs. People would know me. People would know me better as Lauren Isaacs. I am a journalist with Eyewitness News, EWN. You'll hear me on Cape Talk and KFM, and also 702 947 up in Johannesburg. I have a very personal experience of domestic violence, physical, verbal, domestic abuse as a result of alcohol abuse. So through my storytelling, I feel the need to let people, especially women and especially children, know that there is help out there and how easily help is available. Because as a child, I didn't know. And I also didn't feel like it was my responsibility. Children always feel like it's the responsibility of an adult. But now things have changed so much and there's so much help available. And that's always what I try to get through in my stories. Help is available no matter your age, no matter where you find yourself. Rural communities, in urban, in the city, there is help. It was the Tasne van Wyk murder case, the 8-year-old girl from Connaught Estate in Elsie's River. And the saddest thing is that Tasne van Wyk's killer was on parole for the most heinous crimes. The fact that this man was walking the streets and people didn't know that he had been locked up for the crimes that he had committed. It's scary, it's awful, and for a while after covering the Tasne van Wyk trial, I could not do any gender-based violence or stories about gender-based violence or crimes involving children or even women, sexual assault, rape cases that came through. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't read statements. I couldn't listen to the details because of the details we had to listen to during the Tasne van Wyk murder trial. There are many cases like Tasne's, like Michaela Williams from Pelican Park. I think it was 2005. She was 8 years old. And her killer was on parole. He served something like 13 years of a 20-year sentence. I stand to be corrected. But he had raped an 8-year-old girl and stabbed her with a pair of scissors. And he thought that she had died, but she didn't. She survived. He got parole, and there was no communication with the victim and her family. And the first time that these people saw this man walking the streets was when he was released on parole, and they saw him in the street. They saw him back in the community. And what happened? What was the consequence? Several months down the line, Michaela was found murdered in Skarpkraal in Philippi because of rehabilitation and reintegration into society.
My name is Jodie Smith, and my story, it's basically about my sexual abuse that I've been through and my life story. I think it was a Saturday morning, yeah. Now my dad always used to go buy the drinks in or stuff in for the shop. But then his wife would go with, and my cousin, she would also go with. And then I would be alone there because my other two cousins, the boys, they would always be out of the house by 8. They already out. So then I would be alone at home. But that day, my aunt did not go with. She woke me up. She said, "Go lay on our bed. I'm going to open the shop now, and I'm going to go bath, but you can go lay, rest." Okay, I just took my blankets. She said, "No, leave everything else. She's going to clear up." I just took my blankets, put it around me, and I went to go lay like in the middle of the bed. I just threw myself there on my stomach. But where their room is, where the door is, if you look straight, here's the kitchen, and then there's the back door.
So it's in the same view?
Yes. And then, I don't know, I think that guy that lived opposite us, he probably watched when the car's leaving or whatever. But then I started falling asleep again. And I started going into a deep sleep. And then I heard something. But I was thinking I was dreaming, you know? And then I felt someone coming on the bed. And then I started waking myself up. He knew it was me laying there, because I'm the only one with this kind of hair in the house. And then I felt this heaviness on top of me. So he basically he laid on top of me, on my back. And I freaked out and I woke up. And as I woke up, he was putting his hands like this under me. And I just shouted hysterically, and my aunt ran out of the toilet, out of the bathroom with a towel around her. And she was shouting and she called him on his name and said, what are you doing? What are you doing to her? What are you doing? And he jumped up so quickly and he started laughing and he said, he was only playing with me. He's only making jokes. He don't know why I'm going on like that. Fine, and that day I just lost it. And I told her, he has been molesting me for months now. And I told her everything. And then he went over. I can't remember what she said. And I blocked most of the stuff out. So I can't remember exactly what she said. But then he went home and I went to the other room. And then my dad came. Then she told my dad, and then my dad went to go call him. My other two cousins are still not there, the two boys, the eldest, they're still not there. And that guy came over. Remember, he's over 30 years old. And I'm still I think he was probably almost 20 years older than me. And I was standing in my cousin's door, and that guy was standing by the outside door. My dad was standing in the kitchen, and my aunt was also standing in the kitchen. And I think my dad asked him what's going on or whatever. And he asked me, and I just started crying and losing it. And I told him he's been touching me and saying things to me. And I know he would have raped me if my aunt wasn't there that morning. And I told him everything. And I was just crying and crying. And that man just stood there and he laughed. And he said, he was making jokes, he was playing with me. He don't know what I'm talking about. He was only playing with me and I took it seriously. And I could see, the thing that hurts me the most is, I could see on my dad's face, it's almost like, I mean, you're supposed to be leaving me, I'm your family. And I could see in his face that he's doubting, you know. And while they were talking, I just walked away. I had an all-star box, and I knew my cousin, the one that was in the gangster, that was captured there. He had a gun in the house, and he put it in my shoebox. And I took that shoebox out, and I took the gun. I know there's bullets in. There's bullets laying in the shoebox, and I just saw myself. It's like I came out of my body and I just saw myself just walking till by him, just shooting him. And just things happening, everything is just mad. And then I just looked at the gun and I just put it back. And I just put it back under the cupboard. And then I walked back into the kitchen. And I just looked at my dad and I said, I want to go home now.
My name is Shafika Davids. I'm originally from Mitchell's Plain. My story is I was 7 when I was sexually molested by my stepdad. When I turned 19, it got more severe, so he started raping me. So I was groomed into a behavior that was very toxic. I made myself believe that my own life was perfect and that I don't have any problems. But I started getting very frustrated. Like I was basically the rotten apple in the house because I always caused problems. I vented out basically. So I was always the one in trouble. Not malicious trouble, but like I seek that appreciation and affection from my mom. So I was always fighting with her basically. Not physical fighting, but fighting. So it started with no, it's just our secret, my mommy's husband, basically. And it went from just being our secret to constantly being violated in a sense of I was being touched and I didn't like it and it was hurt. It was pain. It was I don't understand because I was only 7 when it started. Um, and then he also had a control over me that made it seem as if I was his girlfriend, basically, like that old. And certain family members could see it and certain family members couldn't. So when I told my mommy, when I grew to understand what was happening, because I was living in a world that for me it was normal because it happened to me since an early age and I didn't seem to ever believe of like oh it's wrong. I started self-harming basically and I became very bad towards myself. I had emotional roller coasters. My mommy called it moods. I was permy moody, permy aggressive, and I have a bad temper, which I'm still working on at this moment in time. After a certain period of time, I told myself, no, I'm only in my early 20s at the time. Not anymore, but I'm 26 now. But still, like I'm too young to have this trauma take over my life. And at that point in time, I was like, no. And then I told him what was going on. And it made him sick to his stomach of what was going on because how do you as an individual get to hear what the person you love has gone through and you never even could help them? So he, in a way, he was upset, but in a way, he was also like, yo, like, what now? And his first words to me was like, I need to open a case because it's wrong. Any person who does that is wrong. You don't confuse wrong and right. What's wrong is wrong and what's right is right. And I was fighting against it because I remember in my mind, I still had that perfect family image. Like my family, there's nothing wrong with my family. And my mommy tend to, she not tend, she did. She came to a point where she tried to manipulate me with, oh, I love you, and just trying to speak nice to me. And no, he's trying to break up my family if I open a case. But it wasn't even like that. The reason for the case was because he was wrong and I need my justice as a female. And as you ruined my childhood. You took from me what you weren't supposed to take from me, and you just expect me to be okay with a, I'm sorry. Life don't work that way. So, after I told my mom, her first words to me was, did he touch your kids? And to me it was, now what am I? Am I not your child? Like, how do you ask me about them and you're not asking me about me? You're not considering me. You're telling me I'm miserable. I'm living miserable. Everybody can't be as miserable as me. But what you don't understand is this is trauma that I'm finally opening my mind up to and accepting that this is what's happening to me. So all of those emotions is currently attacking me because now all of that feelings are coming at me headstrong and I don't know what to do. I went and opened my case without any one of them knowing. I did my GBV course, and that was the day the lady who I did the GBV course, the name is with Marlene Rousseau. After I did it, my mommy still showed up there, and Marlene still spoke to me and my mom. And my mom was like, no, how could this have happened? We were all living in the same house. It's all just like, you're not even believing what I'm saying, even though the same man admitted to what he did to you and my partner, but you're still sweeping it under the rug after he admitted what he did. What more do you want? If someone's telling me I did do it, how do I not believe that it's the truth because you admitted to what you did wrong? After that, my anxiety started. This room, I avoided every human being. I would lay in this room in the dark, almost like I threw my life away, until one day I just had enough. Because I was going through my phone and I saw that they were celebrating Christmas together with the same rapist. They're celebrating 21st together with the same rapist. But I'm being thrown one side. I'm being told I'm seeking attention. So what did I do? I got up and I said, that's enough. So now that I see that you guys are living by my code is, if you support a rapist, then you're just as guilty. Because that is the reason why our society is as messed up as it is today. Because we have family members, we have friends, we have partners who actually don't see that what the people are doing is wrong. They're motivating them, they're supporting them, they're supporting their wrong.
So human trafficking is what we call modern day slavery, or basically using people as commodities. We all use commodities every day. You use deodorant, face wash, bread, milk. Those are all things that we buy, we consume, and when they're finished, we go out and buy more. Human trafficking does that to a human being. It puts a price tag or a value on what the human life or the human body can produce in terms of money for another person, and it basically commodifies a human being. There are lots of different types of trafficking that you could prosecute as a crime. We often see labor trafficking, we see domestic servitude, or basically a household slave. We see organ trafficking, trafficking for purposes of adoption, and then we obviously see sex trafficking as well. Sex trafficking is when someone is trafficked for the purpose of exploitation in the sex industry. So that could be as an escort, it could be as a sex slave, it could be online sexual exploitation, so through web cameras. But the point is that the exploitation is for the purpose of sex. So now that we understand what trafficking is and the types of trafficking that you can see, how human trafficking presents in every context is obviously different. And in South Africa, we have a myriad of vulnerabilities that render the female population and actually the male population very, very vulnerable to trafficking, and specifically sex trafficking. I think wherever there is a demand for paid for sex or for sexual services, you will have to have a supply. And there are just not enough people who put up their hand and say, this is a job that I want to do. This is something that I see that I want to do for my life. Obviously, children cannot consent to, having sex with adults or being paid for sex. That is trafficking. So whenever you see a demand for sex, whether it's with children or paid for sex, then you are going to see a supply. And very often that is with vulnerable people and what we, who then become sex slaves. Now, very often in South Africa, people are recruited we see two common methods of recruitment for sex trafficking. So specifically the lover boy method, or that's what we would call someone posing as a boyfriend, someone posing as a love interest, a trusted male or female love interest who will pretend to, have feelings for a young girl or a young boy. But we're talking about females here, so let's do it in that regard. They'll pretend to have feelings for them. They'll woo them. They'll gain trust. It's basically a whole grooming process. The same way a pedophile would groom a small child. This is how the lover boy method works. They develop trust. They, they get a sense of, we're in this together. And then what they start to do is separate this person from their loved ones. Maybe, putting them against their family, telling them how much they are their support rather than their friends and family, isolating them, so to say, and creating a dependence on them, that this young, vulnerable person is now reliant and trusting of their groomer. And then usually they follow them to another part of the country or another town. And you basically by then have a willing victim, someone who believes they're in a love relationship. And often they don't have healthy relationships modeled at home. So what they're seeing is it's someone who's giving me attention. It may not always be positive attention, but it's attention. So I'm going to go with this. And then very often you have what we would call it's not a willing victim, but someone who doesn't realize they're even being exploited. I think I'm doing something for my boyfriend. I'm helping to pay the rent. What this young girl doesn't realize is there's probably 5 or 6 other girls who he's doing the same thing to. Ultimately, the pimp. I've recruited you from this false relationship, and now I'm using that relationship over you as a form of control to gain your consent to then exploit you. So that's often the one way is a lover boy, and the other way is grooming through social media. So this could often falls in with lover boy method. So someone who may approach you on social media and again strike up that relationship or that trusting scenario. And before you know it, you've given away half your life details over social media before even meeting somebody. And very often that's a way that lover boy method can take place. It can start on socials online. But then in South Africa, about 50% of the victims who were identified last year, in our last financial year, 2022, were recruited through false job opportunities. So young men, young women who are looking for employment, they are desperate for employment. They either haven't finished high school or they need to provide for their family, or they have finished high school, they can't find a job, and they land up taking a job that is too good to be true. And they find themselves then, instead of in the call center job or the shop assistant job or the personal assistant job, they're actually a sex slave. So lover boy method, online recruitment, and then false job opportunities is the most common ways that we see South Africans being recruited into the sex trade. There are many ways that people could partner and get alongside A21. From the first way is to obviously partner financially, whether it's a monthly partner, you're hosting a fundraiser once a year, or even donating sanitary items and gently used clothing for our survivors who have been rescued. Whenever we go out and we meet a survivor at the police station or wherever, we always take them a bag of basic sanitary items, basic clothing items, because often they're rescued with the clothes on their back and nothing else. And so, partnering in that way, doing a drive within your community or your local place of worship and, collecting those items and getting them to us. That's one simple way to do it. Another way is actually to get behind the cause by raising awareness. It is something that is not difficult to do. We have so much resource on our website for social media that you can screenshot, download, share to actually make people in your immediate world aware of human trafficking. You'd be surprised how many people don't realize that it happens here on our back stoop, if you want to say it. Many people think Taken, they think the States, they think Europe, but it happens here in South Africa. So making people aware is a huge win. And then lastly is how do you educate yourself and others around you? Again, on our website, we have so many free programs from the age of 3 up. If you're a preschool teacher, we have a beautiful program for 3 to 6 year olds, teaching them safe body boundaries, safe and unsafe secrets, safe and unsafe touch. Key principles that often aren't taught in the home, equipping you as an early childhood teacher or a creche care provider, how to actually run a program. It's free on our website, doesn't need much. It's crayons, no hula hoop. It's pretty much what you need for the program. To high school students, talking to them about cyber safety, being safe online. Who do you chat to online? Who don't you? All of that is on our website, and you can find it at a21.org/education. All of the resources are there, and that's another way to partner with A21. Equip yourself and equip others around you.
So the advice that I would give to teenagers and young girls is
speak out and speak and reach out to someone. Reach out to someone that you maybe trust, or even if it's somebody that you don't even know.
when you do find yourself in a situation of being abused, the one thing the older women will always tell you is the minute he disrespects you the first time, that is the time you need to walk and not hold on. Not believe that there is, oh, tomorrow it will change tomorrow.
No matter what you do in life, you need to have your back. You need to support you. You need to take care of you, because you can only take care of someone else if you're taking care of yourself. And what you don't want done to yourself, don't do to the next person. This world is too cruel to be unkind. And you never know if you being kind is going to save someone else.
I would like to say that it's not your mistake, and most certainly you're not to be blamed.
There's always help there outside. There is always help. You just need to speak to the right person. Do not feel discouraged. Do not believe the perpetrator. They are lying to you. They are liars. They say that they will do bad things to you. If you tell someone it's a lie, don't believe them.
Money op je niet wanneer dan kan zij vast aan nou. Money op je niet wanneer dan kan zij vast aan nou. Money op je niet wanneer dan kan zij vast aan nou. Oh. Ze suffer in your silence. Alles so violent. Alle grijpen your mind. In zij zijn een crisis. Maar zij zal alright. Dus break net your silence. Break net your silence. Break net your silence. Dingen zal alright, het zal alright. Praat met iemand. Praat met iemand, dat is altijd iemand. Praat met iemand. Praat met iemand, dat is altijd iemand. Ik weet dan, dat is niet iemand. Geef me jouw hand. Ik weet dan, dat is niet iemand. Geef me jouw hart, ja. Van zijn moeder trouw. Ons wil jou opbouw. Ik zal altijd met jou. En ik loop aan met jou. Mijn kassie, ik hit jou. Ik hit jou. Dit is donker. Dit is donker. Maar ik sta voor je. Jij is altijd genoeg. 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 Ik weet dat nooit het is. 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 Vir die pad is lang, jy voel nou swak, maar dis in die haar. Ik hit jou aan, kom ons loop die pad, kom ons kap.